Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, July 14th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for joining with us and tuning in again this week. Now for this week's message, I want to focus once again on the cost of living adjustment, otherwise known as the COLA. Now, if you've been a member of our association for a while, or if you just tune in, whether it's to our YouTube channel or on Facebook, you know that we quite frequently talk about the COLA. And the reason for that is just because of the sheer importance of it to public retirees, to make sure that your pensions, or at least as best as possible, are keeping up with inflation, which has become a bigger and bigger challenge, particularly over the last few years, with sort of a generational high of inflation, sort of capping out last summer around 9% or so. Thankfully, it has reduced quite dramatically over the past year. Earlier this week, the most recent report from the federal government indicates that inflation year over year is down around 3%. However, that does not mean that the prices that have increased over the last few years have been reduced. All that means is that future prices are going to increase somewhere around 3% on average. But again, we all know just how expensive things have gotten over the past few years. Take a trip to the grocery store, look at that checkout counter meter going up and up and up as your groceries are being rung up. Everybody feels it. But that pain and that pressure is even that much more dramatic when it comes to retirees living on fixed incomes, particularly the older people get. Your ability to hold a part-time job or to keep up with inflation because of the reduction in purchasing power of your pension becomes more and more dramatic over the years. And ever since Mass Retirees was founded back in 1968, one of our primary focuses year in and year out has been the COLA. And we've had some great success over the years of improving COLA benefits, whether it be changing the law in the early 1970s to allow the COLA to be applied for all retirees, not just folks receiving a pension under a certain amount. Back in the late 70s, we were able to change the law to allow every COLA that's received in Massachusetts to be cumulative, not be treated as bonus payments like exists in many other states. So we have been able over the years to incrementally make improvements. And the last major incremental improvement took place way back in 1997 when the Kohler Reform Law was passed that returned responsibility for the local COLA to the 102 local retirement systems, who have done a phenomenal job in most cases of incrementally increasing that benefit every few years. And in fact, we have more and more systems either at $18,000 now for their COLA base or even beyond. Barnstable County is now at $20,000. The town of Wellesley is at $19,000 for the current fiscal year. They'll be at $20,000 next year, and then $21,000 for FY26. So at the local level, things are trending in the right direction, and it's never going to be as quickly or as much as we would like to see. And that's really the primary reason for that is the cost of these benefits. Now, as I say in today's written email message that went out this morning to all of our members, the challenge we have isn't convincing state or local officials of the merits of increasing the base or the merits of increasing the general COLA benefit by and large. The challenge we face every time that we try to make these improvements, particularly at the state level these days, has been the very high cost of increasing the COLA base or paying any type of enhanced benefit that's not already part of the pension funding schedule. And when we went to a pension funding process or requirement back in the 1980s, that was a very good thing overall for our retirement systems and certainly for retirees. It brought stability to the system. It ensured that you can have peace of mind in retirement, that you're going to get your check each and every month, that suddenly we're not going to go bankrupt because of some type of mismanagement or the underfunding of the system that took place generations ago. But because of the structures of the funding schedule and the legal requirements that go into that, every benefit has to be funded. This is no longer what they call a pay-as-you-go system. Social Security, on the other hand, operates as a pay-as-you-go system. The money that's coming into Social Security today is going right back out the door to pay current benefits. And the federal government also has the ability to deficit spend or create debt. The state and the local governments here in Massachusetts and around the country legally cannot do that. We have to pay these bills as they become due, which makes the process that much more difficult. So again, at the local level, we've seen a lot of progress, and that's because across the board, most municipalities have really made it a point to accelerate the pay down of their pension unfunded liability, while at the same time incrementally making improvements as the system has done well. So in other words, sharing the success of the investment returns with the retirees who are the beneficiaries of the system. That's a very important point, because as all of you know, even if you are eligible for a small Social Security benefit, it is greatly reduced by the windfall elimination provision. So your retirement benefit, by and large, is your public pension. That's the windfall, so to speak, in terms of your retirement income is coming from your public pension. So it makes the annual COLA for the pension that much more important. So at the state level, it has now been 12 years since we've been able to increase the base. It's been at a $13,000 level since 2011. It has only increased once since 1997. So over the past quarter of a century, we've seen a single increase in the state and teacher COLA base. It's just not cutting it anymore. We have to find a way to move forward. Now the good news is, again, we don't need to convince the state legislature or the governor or the treasurer of the merits of getting behind a COLA base increase, or even creating a senior or enhanced COLA, or coming up with other ideas to help long-term retirees better keep pace with inflation. The difficulty here is finding a way to make this affordable for the retirement systems, for the taxpayers, for current retirees, for future retirees. The finances have to balance out and make sense. We are making the argument that right now things are out of balance. It's been far too long since the Commonwealth has increased the state and teacher COLA base. So the question is, what are we doing about it? Well, what we have been doing about it is making sure that we are meeting with legislative leaders to educate them and their staff of how the system works, trying to come up with some creative financing ideas to pay for these new unfunded liabilities, perhaps over a longer period of time. This past week, Frank Valeri and I met with the senior staff of Governor Maura Healey. We spent over an hour in the governor's office walking through the history of the system, explaining in great detail how the benefit works, the challenges that we're now facing, and the hurdles that we have to overcome in increasing this benefit. And while no decisions were made, or no commitments that we're going to do X, Y, or Z, Frank and I walked away from that meeting feeling very encouraged that at the very least we're on the same page with the governor and her staff of the need to do this. We feel very confident that we have an ally in Governor Healey and her staff, and in Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, and that we have folks in the corner office right now that we can work with very closely to find a way to move this forward. And that was the commitment that they made to us, that we will continue to talk, that we will find a way in the coming months to come up with a real plan of how this can take place going forward. At the same time, we're meeting with various key retirement public policy officials in the state, from both the state and teacher retirement boards, from PERAC. We're bringing together all of the folks who are responsible for your benefits as a retiree, that collectively we can put our heads together and figure out what the next step is. Now, the landmark Kohler Reform legislation that was passed back in 1997, that was the result of a special commission. We had run into a similar problem in the mid-90s, where the benefits had become so expensive and it created such a large hurdle to have to overcome. Something needed to change. And over the period of about 6 months, we were able to work together with Governor Patrick's office and others, or excuse me, Governor Weld, and Charlie Baker was the Secretary of A&F back then, and we had friends in the corner office. Governor Weld supported our efforts, Lieutenant Governor Cellucci at the time supported our efforts, then Secretary Baker supported our efforts, and together with the legislative leadership, we were able to create the Kohler Reform Law that was passed as Chapter 17 in 1997. And here we are, about a quarter of a century later, with a lot of success has been achieved over that period of time. However, the state and teacher systems are lagging behind, and we need to find a way very quickly to move this forward. Now, the good news is that while we've been working on coming up with some new concepts and potentially some funding schedule payment methods, the stock market and the financial markets, the global financial markets, have started to turn around. 2022 was a terrible year. On average, most of the public pension systems, including the state and teacher systems that invest their money through the PRIT fund, lost about 10% or a little bit over 10% in 2022. Things have turned around in 2023. Now, we don't have the numbers just yet for the first 6 months of the year. We're anticipating that report coming down in the next week or so. You can look forward to, hopefully by next Friday, if not the following Friday, sometime during the month of July, we'll be reporting on what we have seen now in terms of investment returns for the first 6 months. By all reports, we anticipate those returns being in the positive territory, somewhere 5 to 7% range is what we're anticipating. So we'll be reporting in further detail on that. But why that is important is that the investment returns are the primary source of the income to the retirement system to pay for these types of benefits. And when you hear us say that the funding schedule can pay for these costs, or that the costs can be absorbed into the schedule, it's because of the investment returns that are being generated by either the local retirement board or the PRIT fund at the state level to pay for these benefits. So fingers crossed that 2023 continues to be a positive year in terms of the financial markets, and that will really help to bolster our ability to achieve a improvement, hopefully a significant improvement to the state and teacher COLA base, as well as perhaps some other changes to the overall benefit to help long-term retirees to catch up a little bit. Before I sign off today, I just want to make one final point. Last week's message talking about which retirement system do I belong to, that really seems to have resonated with quite a few members. Many of you reached back out to me either by email or a phone call or on social media, indicating that you appreciated that message because you had questions yourself about what system you were involved in. And it is confusing. There are 225,000 public retirees and surviving spouses who are members of the 104 retirement systems across Massachusetts. It gets confusing for folks. So one of the things we're going to do in terms of educating our members is republish that story in the September newsletter to make sure we're getting that information to everybody, because not everyone sees these weekly messages. We have a number of members who just don't participate online, they don't get email. Their primary ability to communicate with us is through the newsletter. So we're going to make sure that we include that information in the newsletter. But I really appreciate the messages and the comments that I received from our members, that you appreciated the content. So with that, I'm going to log off for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back to you next Friday, which I believe is July 21st. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the summer while it lasts.